this is future me coming to just put a little warning at the beginning of these 2 episodes. Happy Mental Health Awareness Month, for one, but 2, these episodes do discuss my journey of depression and anxiety and my car accident. Not in graphic detail, but they do discuss my struggles. And if any of this could upset you, please come back after these 2 episodes and normal content will be resumed. But please be kind to yourself. And this is my journey with mental health. And I hope that you're kind enough to yourself. If any of the depression, anxiety, sleep problems trigger you and going to therapy, then please skip this video and I will see you again soon. Bye. Hey everyone, happy Mental Health Awareness Month. I can't believe we're at episode 10 or 11? I should know, but I don't, of this podcast. It's passed quite a lot of things have happened, a lot of things have changed since the beginning of the year. But May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and it's quite important to me and to many neurodivergent individuals. And I wanted to talk about my journey with mental health, but because it's quite long and I don't like to make these episodes too long, because I don't like to make things too long for people to pay attention to, or people to have hours and hours and hours to listen to these. So I broke them down into 2. So this one that I'm recording now is my journey to accepting and getting help. And then not next week, the week after, on this next episode day, my journey to management of my mental illness. So let's see where we get off to. So I've faced quite a journey with my mental health, and I've got notes here because there's so much that I can't remember it all, and there's a lot that I'm not ready to put out on the internet. But I guess we've all had mental health, but in high school we were taught about anxiety and managing exam stress and school stress with anxiety and peer pressure. And I often just thought this thing called anxiety that we talked about was something I felt more or less constantly, which made more sense when I got my ASD diagnosis. So I had acute anxiety when I was a teenager, but I just thought that was normal, and to a level it is, but not panic attacky daily kind of situation, which is what I was in, which wasn't easy to manage. And then depression came into my life like an inked water when I was 16, 17. So when you add ink to water, drop by drop by drop, it slowly dilutes into the water, and the water becomes darker and darker and darker. And that's what my mind felt like. And then there was this downward spiral, and it really did feel like a spiral going down and down and down and down. And the further I got down, and the more I wanted to get up, but I couldn't get up because I just didn't know how. For the longest time, I denied there was a problem. So I mainly became really poorly when I was in employment. And this isn't purely to blame in employment, but there was a big situational aspect to that. But I blamed the long hours. I was often working 8 a.m. in the morning till nearly midnight, or like 10 at night till 10 at night, or 10 in the morning till 10 at night without really any break, or if I had a break it's like 5 minutes, if that. I blamed it on the long hours. I blamed it on how people treated me, which was partially true. One of the reasons why I'm so big in advocating for mental health and neurodiversity, and how naive you can feel as a neurodivergent person, is massively to do with this, because the way I got treated was bad, and I presumed that was normal because they told me it was normal, and that spiral back and forth, and it was bound to have a negative effect. I blame being a teenager, a hormonal teenager. It has a lot to blame with it. I blamed PMS for a while. I blamed having a bad period. I blamed being in pain, because around this sort of time I'd torn my abdominal wall and I was in a lot of pain. We didn't know that's what I'd done at the time, but I was in a lot of pain. And I blamed it on just being tired. And what I didn't realise is that my mental state was amplifying everything else. And it was kind of like oh, that's going to make that worse. That's going to make your body's hurting, going to make your head worse. But your head worse is going to make your body worse. And it was just like these two things were fighting each other, and they got bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. I remember feeling alone, scared, numb, heavy, dark, not wanting to talk to anyone, not wanting to be near anyone other than the dogs. Dogs, my soft spot. being tired, having a very, very short attention span, an even shorter fuse in terms of anger, and just blowing in a way into meltdown, which I now understand. What waking up and not being able to move, but mentally being awake, it's something called sleep paralysis, and it really is scary because your head is awake but your body can't move, and it feels like you've been paralyzed. You can't lift a finger, you can't move, you can't get up, you can't do anything, but your brain is awake. It is the most horrifying thing that I never want anyone to experience. I remember the night terrors, I remember the insomnia because I didn't want to experience the night terror, but I was so tired, and then I was thinking about everything that I had to do tomorrow, and it was a nasty circle. But the list is almost endless of how I really felt. Now, I'd like to say I recognised that I needed help and I got help when I asked for it, but it wasn't like that. So I think my downturn in between getting help and being ill was about 14 months. And this isn't to say there was any one thing to blame for this. There was a few things that were kind of stopping it. I was in physical pain, and I believe that was the only thing that was a problem. And I was waiting for surgery, and I tried changing jobs and seeing all these things until my abdominal wall, and then wasn't well. And it was like a spiral. I was like, I admitted I had a problem, but I didn't think I was that bad. And then I blamed my physical ailments for the reason my head hurts. I was like, let's fix the body, head will follow. Surely it didn't. It really didn't. And then I was near enough to 18, so I was like 16, 17 to 18, where CAMHS in the UK, the Child and Adolescent Mental Health Service, list was so long, they were like, we won't see her before she turns 18 anyway. And then she's got to go on another wait list. And that was difficult because, in fact, there was a lot going on that the GP didn't know about. And there was a lot going on that I wasn't telling my parents about. And there was a lot that I didn't want to tell anybody. But if someone had taken the time to build a relationship with me, I probably would have been at the top of the CAMHS list. I was in a very bad space, and within 2.5 months I'd had a really rough ride. So this is about April, May of 2019. I'd been signed off work on the 1st of March because I was in so much pain. I'd been put on tramadol, which is a really strong narcotic painkiller, and it was great. And I can't believe I'm saying that, but I was the biggest, and I still am, an anti-drug advocate, but the drugs that were killing my physical pain, which every time I moved made me want to scream. But it had the added benefit of numbing my brain. I actually couldn't feel anything mentally, physically, and all I had to do was lie there because I couldn't work. I was so out of it. And it felt amazing. And I think if it had only been a couple of days, it would have been great. But this went from surgery being delayed to find out what the problem was for like 7 or 8 weeks. And then I had, in the middle of that, I had a really bad period as well, which the tramadol wasn't touching. And I lost it. And the dosage slowly increased as the pain increased, as my head decreased. And I was burnt out. There is no other way to explain it. It was an autistic burnout in its purest form. But I was living painkiller dose to painkiller dose. And I don't now take painkillers. I'll take like paracetamol and stuff like that, but even though I have a chronic pain disorder and I am in pain all the time, I don't really want to go on to anything, because although it may feel physically great, the effect on my head and the chance of addiction due to in combination with my autism and my PTSD and everything else, it's so complex that it's actually not worth it. So I was very ill, and I wasn't really getting out of bed because I felt so sick and I couldn't sleep, but I was kind of in this like doze state. It was kind of hard to explain. And I was so angry, and I found out what was wrong, and the surgery went okay and all these things, and I was recovering from surgery. I had a few infections, fine, but I was scared. As the painkillers came off and I physically felt better, but my head didn't improve, was when I was like, maybe I've got a bigger problem here than I originally thought I did. So that was quite hard. It was hard in many ways to admit that, because people have been telling me, my mum and dad have been telling me for months, you're not right, something's wrong, what's wrong? It's like, I'm fine, I just don't feel well. I was scared and I was alone, and I was having a meltdown every day, and at maximum, that was how long I'd go. It could be 2 or 3 times a day. And no wonder I felt bad. I just don't know. My journey to recovery started at not even my lowest point, which may sound kind of juxtaposition of what I'm saying, but 2 weeks after I had surgery, I was in a very nasty car accident. And in a way, I'd always thought of having my driving license, and I still do, as my key to independence. So those of you who don't know me that listen to the podcast, because I know some of my friends and family do, that I live in the middle of nowhere, but very, very seriously. It's a 20-minute commute to uni, but even then I don't go to a uni in a city. And I remember crashing, and it wasn't my fault. In fact, people say it was an act of God, but I don't think it was. It was a mechanical fault on my quite new car. It was only a year old, and the steering rack failed on my car. And what that means is the steering column, the thing that you use to navigate where you want the car to go, one wheel went one way and the other went the other. So the passenger wheel locked the complete opposite way the passenger wheel locked straight and the driver wheel locked the way I was steering, and it pulled me off, and I hit a tree, and I could see it happening, and I couldn't do anything. I could hanker on the brakes as hard as I could, but I wasn't stopping, and I wasn't even going near the speed limit. I was going like 20 under it, because the speed limit on that road isn't what it should be. And I hit a tree and I lost it. And that was the Saturday, and then on the Monday, Mum took me to the doctors because I couldn't move. I was really struggling, and it was hard, and it was one of those things that I couldn't really explain, but I was more or less catatonic. You couldn't talk to me. I was just in this like autopilot, eat, sleep, bed, eat, sleep, cuddle, bed, eat, sleep, cuddle the dog, bed. I couldn't do anything. I couldn't bend. I couldn't move. And I was meant to have been going back to work on the Wednesday, and the doctor looked at me and went, there's no way that's happening. Not a hell chance of that. And that's when it occurred to me that I couldn't go back. The physical pain, and although the surgery had recovered from the injuries from the car accident, weren't going away anytime soon, and we're now 4 years later, and my injuries still hurt from the car accident, but it had screwed my head, and it was almost the saying, the straw that broke the camel's back. I was holding on. I wasn't really coping. I wasn't living, but I was coping, and that was it. That was it then. I couldn't take anymore. I couldn't explain what had happened to me when I was working, not at that job, at the job before, or the job before that, I can't even remember. And I lost it, and I completely broke down. I couldn't speak, I couldn't explain how I felt because I didn't have the words to do that. Thank you, therapy. But it hurt, and it hurt hard. And 2 days after that, I was no better, and my mum was like, no, something's seriously wrong with my child, and took me back to the GP. And normally they don't give antidepressants unless you're under CAMS until you're 18. This was May 14th, 2019. My birthday's August 7th. It's something to do with brain development, which is why they don't do it. But I was so ill, a GP literally said, if we don't do something, you're going to get even worse. And how much brain development it's going to really impact is probably negligible in between May and August. So you got June, July. My birthday's the first week of August. It was worth the risk, or the minimal risk that probably was going to cause. So I started taking citalopram at a very low dose to begin with. It didn't stay that low, but that's part of my management thing. I'm going to leave that for next time. But I remember take these tablets that were in a sheet. I've got a sheet of them next door actually, I should have brought it in here. And I remember having this tiny tablet in my hand and looking at it, and it taking me 3 hours to swallow it. But that wasn't the end of my deterioration. Although the meds helped to a degree, they brought me up a little bit, and then I'd crash again, and we'd up the dose, and I'd come up a little bit and I'd crash again. And that was kind of the pattern that I was cycling through until I went to college in the September. And I was like, I can't go back to my job I was doing, I need to do something new. So I started to study at college full time. And that's when I got my autism diagnosis, which we've talked about on this podcast before. But that was me at my lowest. And I will be really honest, most of the stuff I've just told you, I don't remember. I know stuff from dates, from pictures on my phone. I know stuff from what other people have told me. I know vague bits, but I don't have much memory from March 2018 to February-ish 2020. It's hazy to me. Like, there's little bits, like we went to Ibiza as a family and I have no memory of it. And for me, people say depression, it's just in your head, but it's so much more. And when I got my diagnosis, it was clear I had depression, and it was clear I had crippling anxiety. But when the actual diagnosis of post-traumatic stress came through, I had to acknowledge what had happened to me and move on from that. Not even move on, accept how damaged I was, but that there was a path to recovery. Or management. I prefer to say management because I never will be 100%. I thrive to be that, but I actually don't know what that feels like. I don't have any memory. To me, and it shocks people when I say this, to me, I don't think the sun ever rose from March 2018 to February 2020. I genuinely don't think the sun rose once. I said this to my mum the other day, and she was like, no, it did, you just never got out of bed. To me, it rained every single day for 2 years. More or less did, but there were gaps in there somewhere. Depression isn't about someone just not getting out of bed or someone being in a bad mood. I remember someone telling me, just cheer up. And I was like, if it was that easy, I would have done it months ago. And I mean that. So the reason why I've come on to say my story is because, much like I advocate about neurodivergence constantly, mental health and neurodivergence are one and the same to me. There is a very high likelihood, if you have autism, ADHD, or any neurodivergent condition, but particularly autism and ADHD, to have a comorbid mental health disorder. because the anxiety and the fears of failure and the spiralling that they can cause does have its effects on you. I am proud to say that I'm still here and I'm still fighting, but I want to be an example that you can get help. It's not always easy, and the journey back up is not always linear. And if you are having mental health problems, please reach out for help. Whether that's a friend, whether that's family, maybe it's your GP, the countless mental health services. I will tag and leave links and phone numbers in the bottom of this video and in the bottom of this podcast notes for teams that you can reach out to for help, services, phone numbers. Use them. The bravest thing you will ever say is, I need help. Those 3 words can not only change your life, they can save it. But they may be the hardest 3 words you mutter in your entire life. Do it, please. It really can change everything. I'm still standing because I said them. And it may feel like you're screaming out for help, but not everyone sees the signs. So yeah, I look forward to speaking to you guys in 2 weeks' time at our next episode. Check in with your friends, and even the one that's happy all the time, because it's amazing what some makeup for a girl or guy can do, or a smile. Maybe just asking, hey, how you doing? Are you okay? Could be the door to save someone's life. And on that note, before I get too emotional, happy Mental Health Awareness Month. I'm doing kind of a lot of activity on my Instagram and Facebook, which I will tag below here if you are interested. And my name's Rebecca. I'm neurodivergent and proud. And I'm proud that I have recovered to a point where I'm managing my mental illness. It's nothing to be ashamed of. See you guys.